Have you ever looked in the mirror and realized that the person staring back at you is not the person you were meant to become? Not because you failed, but because you settled. Settled for comfort. Settled for excuses. Settled for the familiar, when something greater was always calling your name. There comes a moment in life when something inside you quietly breaks. Not your strength, but your illusion of who you thought you were. That moment is painful, yes, but it is also powerful. Because you don't rebuild yourself when life is easy. You rebuild yourself when you are tired of staying the same. Most people wait for a perfect time to change. A new year, a new month, a new opportunity. But the truth is, perfect moments don't rebuild people. Pain, pressure, and decisions do. Real change doesn't start with comfort. It starts with discomfort, honesty, and courage. Today is not about becoming someone new overnight. It's about refusing to remain the same. It's about deciding, right now, that your past does not get to control your future. And it's about understanding one thing: you don't rebuild your life when you feel ready, you rebuild it when you decide you've had enough. Personal responsibility is the foundation of real growth, because it shifts power from external circumstances back into your own hands. When you accept personal responsibility, you stop living as a passive observer of your life and start becoming an active creator of it. It means recognizing that while you cannot control everything that happens to you, you can always control how you respond, what you learn, and what you choose to do next. This mindset removes the habit of blaming people, situations, or timing and replaces it with ownership of results. Many people misunderstand personal responsibility as harsh self-criticism, but it is the opposite. It is not about beating yourself up for mistakes, but about becoming honest with yourself. When you admit that your choices, habits, and reactions shape your outcomes, you give yourself the freedom to change them. Blame keeps you stuck because it points outward, but responsibility unlocks progress because it points inward. You begin to ask better questions, not, "Why did this happen to me?" but "What can I learn from this and how can I improve?" Taking personal responsibility also builds mental strength. Every time you choose not to make excuses, you strengthen your character. You stop waiting for motivation to appear and start acting based on commitment instead. This creates a powerful shift where you understand that your future is not something you wait for, but something you prepare for. You stop hoping your life will improve by luck and start understanding that improvement is the result of consistent, intentional effort. Another important part of personal responsibility is emotional ownership. This means understanding that other people cannot control your internal world unless you allow it. You learn that anger, jealousy, fear, and frustration are not caused by others, but triggered by situations you can learn to manage. This does not mean becoming emotionless, but becoming self-aware enough to pause, choose your reaction, and respond with maturity. This level of control gives you stability even when circumstances are unstable. Personal responsibility also affects how you treat time. Instead of wasting hours complaining, scrolling, or procrastinating, you become more aware that time is your most valuable resource. When you fully understand that your time is limited, you begin to invest it wisely. You prioritize learning, health, relationships, and meaningful work instead of comfort and distraction. You stop saying, "I don't have time," and start saying, "I need better priorities." Another transformation happens in your relationships. When you take responsibility for your behavior, communication improves. You stop expecting others to read your mind or fix your feelings. You become clearer, calmer, and more respectful. You apologize when you are wrong, not because you are weak, but because you are strong enough to own your imperfections. This builds trust and respect, both for yourself and from others, because people feel safe around someone who does not hide behind pride or excuses. Over time, personal responsibility becomes a habit rather than a decision. It becomes a way of life where you instinctively look for solutions instead of reasons. You no longer measure yourself by what happens to you, but by how you respond. You become solution-driven, growth-oriented, and self-directed. You stop asking for an easier life and start working on becoming a stronger person, because you understand that strength gives you options. When you fully embrace personal responsibility, your identity begins to change. You no longer see yourself as someone who is stuck, unlucky, or powerless. You begin to see yourself as capable, adaptable, and resilient. You trust yourself more because you have proven that you can handle challenges without running away. This self-trust becomes the backbone of confidence, allowing you to take risks, chase opportunities, and walk through difficulties with courage and clarity. Discipline over motivation is a principle that recognizes how unreliable motivation can be and how powerful consistent habits are. Motivation is emotional, and emotions rise and fall. Some days you wake up energized, ready to take on challenges, and other days you feel tired, distracted, or discouraged. If your progress depends only on how you feel, then your results will always be inconsistent. Discipline, on the other hand, is built on structure and commitment, not mood, and that is why it becomes the real engine of long-term success. Discipline is not about being extreme or harsh with yourself. It is about creating rules that protect your goals when your feelings try to talk you out of them. It shows up in small, unglamorous actions: waking up when you said you would, working when you would rather rest, practicing when no one is watching. These small acts of consistency compound over time. You may not see massive change in a single day, but weeks and months of disciplined effort create transformations that motivation alone could never sustain. Relying on motivation can actually make things harder. When you wait to feel inspired before starting, you turn action into a luxury instead of a responsibility. The mind begins to associate effort with needing a perfect mood. Discipline breaks that pattern by teaching your brain that action comes first and feelings will follow. Often, once you start working, energy appears, clarity appears, confidence appears. But none of that happens if you sit and wait to feel ready. Discipline also builds identity. Every time you keep a promise to yourself, even a small one, you strengthen your self-trust. You start seeing yourself as someone who follows through, someone who does not quit just because things feel uncomfortable. This internal identity shift is powerful because once you believe you are disciplined, your behavior naturally begins to match that belief. You stop negotiating with yourself about whether to do the hard thing and simply do it because that is who you are becoming. There is also a mental toughness that comes from discipline. Life will not always be kind, fair, or supportive. There will be stress, criticism, setbacks, and pressure. When you are disciplined, you are not shaken easily by these things. You have trained yourself to stay steady, to keep moving even when results are slow or invisible. You understand that success is not built in moments of excitement, but in moments of resistance when you feel tired yet choose to continue. Another important aspect of discipline is how it creates freedom. At first, discipline feels like restriction because it requires effort and structure. But over time, it becomes the source of your freedom. When your health is supported by disciplined habits, you have more energy. When your finances are handled with disciplined decisions, you have more security. When your skills are developed through disciplined practice, you have more opportunities. What feels like sacrifice in the present becomes strength in the future. Discipline also changes how you handle your inner dialogue. Instead of arguing with yourself about why you should not act, you begin to quiet the excuses. You understand that your future is too important to be controlled by temporary discomfort. You stop letting fear and laziness make decisions. This does not mean you stop feeling tired or doubtful, but you stop letting those feelings dictate your actions. You act because you decided this path matters. With time, discipline becomes automatic. You no longer rely on dramatic bursts of inspiration. You rely on systems, routines, and standards. Your life begins to move forward steadily rather than in unpredictable surges. You become calm in your consistency, confident in your process, and strong in your habits because you are no longer chasing motivation. You are driven by commitment and guided by discipline. Learning from failure is one of the most powerful skills a person can develop because failure is not an opposite of success. It is usually a part of the path toward it. Many people see failure as proof that they are not good enough, smart enough, or capable enough. In reality, failure is feedback. It provides raw, honest information about what worked, what didn't, and what needs to change. When you begin to see failure as a learning tool instead of a personal verdict, your entire relationship with growth changes. Most people fear failure because of how it affects their self-image. They worry about embarrassment, judgment, and disappointment. This fear can become so strong that they avoid trying altogether. Ironically, this avoidance creates a much bigger failure, the failure to grow. When you accept that mistakes are part of the process, you give yourself permission to try, experiment, and stretch beyond your comfort zone. That willingness opens the door to improvement. Failure teaches lessons that success often cannot. When things go right, we rarely question our methods. We simply move forward. But when something goes wrong, we are forced to analyze. We ask why the plan failed, what decisions were weak, and what skills were missing. This reflection builds awareness, and awareness builds wisdom. Over time, you become sharper, more strategic, and more resilient because you have learned to extract value from setbacks. Another powerful aspect of learning from failure is humility. Failure reminds you that you are a student of life, not a master who has everything figured out. This humility keeps you open to advice, mentorship, and new perspectives. When you stop pretending to be perfect, you become teachable. That teachability is what allows you to adapt in a fast, changing world. A person who refuses to admit mistakes stays the same, while a person who studies them evolves. There is also a strength that comes from surviving failure. When you experience disappointment and realize you are still standing, still breathing, and still capable of trying again, fear loses some of its power. You begin to trust yourself more, not because you never fail, but because you know you can recover. This builds emotional resilience, which is far more valuable than a perfect track record. Learning from failure also sharpens perspective. You start to see patterns in your behavior, such as procrastination, poor planning, or unrealistic expectations. You notice weaknesses in skill and discipline. Once these patterns become visible, they stop being invisible obstacles and start becoming areas for improvement. You move from blaming external factors to refining internal systems. Another important part of this process is patience. Failure teaches that growth takes time. It breaks the illusion of instant success. When you fail and get back up, you learn that progress often looks messy and nonlinear. It has detours, pauses, and setbacks. This understanding makes you more patient with yourself and others, and that patience keeps you from quitting too early. Failure also builds courage. The more times you fall and rise, the less terrifying failure becomes. You stop treating it like a disaster and start treating it like a temporary condition. This courage makes you more willing to take calculated risks. You try new approaches, start new projects, and push beyond familiar limitations because you know that even if you fail, you will walk away wiser. As this mindset strengthens, failure begins to lose its negative identity. It becomes a training ground. It becomes preparation. It becomes a teacher that never runs out of lessons. You begin to focus less on avoiding mistakes and more on improving yourself. The mind shifts from protecting pride to pursuing progress, and that shift quietly transforms how you move through challenges, setbacks, and uncertainty every single day. A mindset shift is the internal transformation that changes the way you see yourself, your abilities, and your circumstances. It is less about what is happening outside and more about what is happening inside your thinking patterns. Before any meaningful change happens in a person's life, it first happens in their beliefs. If you believe you are limited, unlucky, or destined for average, your actions will unconsciously align with those thoughts. When you shift your mindset, you rewrite the internal script that guides your behavior every single day. Most people live with a fixed mindset without realizing it. They believe intelligence is static, talent is inherited, and success is reserved for a lucky few. This way of thinking creates invisible walls. It makes challenges feel like threats rather than opportunities. A mindset shift begins when you recognize that abilities can be developed, habits can be changed, and effort can reshape your future. This change in belief instantly expands what feels possible. A powerful part of this shift is how you view problems. Instead of seeing problems as signs of failure, you begin to see them as puzzles to be solved. This doesn't make life easier, but it makes you stronger. When you believe that obstacles are part of growth, you stop avoiding them and start approaching them with curiosity and courage. This turns struggle into training instead of suffering. A mindset shift also changes your relationship with effort. In an old mindset, effort feels like proof that you are not naturally good enough. In a new mindset, effort becomes a badge of commitment. You begin to respect hard work instead of resenting it. You understand that talent without effort fades. But effort over time builds skill, confidence, and results. This shift makes discipline feel meaningful instead of oppressive. Another major impact of a mindset shift is how you talk to yourself. Your inner dialogue becomes more constructive. Instead of saying, "I can't do this," you begin to say, "I can learn how to do this." Instead of saying, "I failed," you say, "I learned." Your thoughts become tools instead of traps. This does not mean you become blindly positive, but you become realistic and solution-oriented. You allow yourself to be human without allowing yourself to be hopeless. Your mindset also affects how you view time. With an old way of thinking, you may feel rushed, anxious, or behind. You compare your path to others and feel pressure to catch up. After a mindset shift, you begin to respect your own timeline. You understand that growth is not a race. You stop wasting energy on comparison and start investing energy in progress. This brings a sense of calm and clarity, even when the path is challenging. Another subtle but powerful change happens in how you handle discomfort. Instead of running from discomfort, you begin to lean into it. You understand that discomfort often signals growth. The hard conversations, the difficult tasks, the moments of doubt become opportunities to develop strength rather than reasons to quit. You no longer see comfort as the goal. You see growth as the goal. Over time, a mindset shift reshapes your identity. You stop identifying as someone who is stuck, weak, or unlucky. You start seeing yourself as adaptable, capable, and evolving. This identity shift changes your choices. You choose healthier habits, stronger boundaries, higher standards, and braver goals. You begin to behave like the person you are becoming, not the person you were conditioned to be. As this process deepens, you begin to trust yourself more. You stop waiting for permission, validation, or perfect circumstances. You understand that you are allowed to grow, to change, and to rebuild. You become mentally flexible, emotionally stronger, and more self-aware. This inner transformation quietly shapes your outer world, because when your thinking changes, your actions change, and when your actions change, your life naturally begins to move in a new direction. Small daily improvements are the invisible force behind long-term success, because real change rarely happens in dramatic, overnight transformations. Instead, it is built through tiny, repeated actions that seem insignificant in the moment but become powerful over time. Most people underestimate the impact of doing small things consistently, because they are obsessed with big leaps. In reality, progress compounds quietly, and those quiet gains eventually separate those who grow from those who stay stuck. When you commit to small daily improvements, you stop chasing perfection and start focusing on progress. You understand that you don't need to be amazing today, you just need to be a little better than yesterday. That might look like reading a few pages instead of none, exercising for 10 minutes instead of skipping entirely, or practicing a skill for a short, focused session. These actions may not feel heroic, but they are effective. Over time, they create a momentum that becomes hard to stop. Consistency is the power source of small improvements. One day of effort does very little, and one day of failure does not ruin everything. It is the pattern that matters. When you show up regularly, even when you feel tired or uninspired, you build a chain of effort that strengthens your identity. You begin to see yourself as someone who shows up, tries, and improves. This identity stays with you longer than any burst of motivation. Another important effect of small improvements is that they lower resistance. Huge goals often feel overwhelming, which causes procrastination and fear. Small steps feel manageable. Your brain is less likely to fight you when the task feels simple and achievable. This reduces anxiety and increases action. You stop waiting for the perfect time and simply begin with what you can handle. Once you begin, it becomes easier to continue. Small daily improvements also sharpen focus. Instead of being scattered across many grand plans, you concentrate on small, targeted actions. This clarity makes your efforts more intentional. You start asking better questions like, what is one thing I can improve today? Instead of trying to fix your entire life in a single weekend. This creates a calm and disciplined approach to growth rather than a chaotic and exhausting one. Another powerful feature of this process is the compounding effect. Just like money growing through interest, your habits grow through repetition. A 1% improvement each day may look tiny, but over months and years it becomes life-changing. Your skills become sharper, your discipline stronger, your confidence deeper. This is not magic and it is not luck. It is the natural result of repeated effort adding up. Small improvements also teach patience, which is a rare and valuable quality. When you stop expecting instant results, you become less frustrated and more committed. You trust the process instead of obsessing over outcomes. This patience protects you from quitting too early because you understand that growth is delayed. You learn to find satisfaction in showing up, not just in winning. Another shift happens in your self-respect. When you improve a little every day, you begin to respect yourself more. You realize that you are capable of change. You stop viewing yourself as stuck or powerless. This growing self-respect influences every area of your life, from how you set boundaries to how you set goals. You stop settling for less because you know you are becoming more. Over time, the accumulation of small daily improvements transforms your life in a quiet but undeniable way. Your habits become healthier, your thinking becomes sharper, and your actions become more purposeful. You don't feel like you woke up one day as a completely different person. Instead, you realize that the person you have become is the natural result of hundreds of small, disciplined decisions made over time, each one building on the last, shaping your character through consistency and quiet determination. Long-term vision is the ability to see beyond immediate comfort and short-term rewards to focus on the bigger picture of who you want to become and the life you want to build. It is not about predicting the future perfectly, but about creating a clear internal direction that guides your decisions. When you have long-term vision, you stop living only for today's pleasure or pain, and you start making choices based on where you want to be years from now. Without long-term vision, life becomes reactive. You respond to situations as they come, chase quick wins, and drift between opportunities without a clear sense of purpose. This leads to inconsistency, frustration, and wasted energy. A long-term vision acts like an internal compass. Even when the path is unclear, you know the direction you are moving in. This clarity brings stability to your actions and reduces the chaos of short-sighted decisions. Long-term vision changes how you experience sacrifice. When you only think about the present, discipline feels like deprivation. You feel like you are missing out by choosing hard work over comfort and delayed gratification over instant pleasure. But when you see the bigger picture, sacrifice becomes an investment. You understand that what you give up today is not a loss, but a trade for something greater in the future. This shift makes it easier to stay committed when things get difficult. Another powerful effect of long-term vision is how it shapes your patience. You become more resilient in seasons of slow progress. Instead of quitting when results take time, you expect growth to be gradual. You understand that meaningful achievements often require years of consistent effort. This patience shields you from discouragement. You stop comparing your journey to others because you are focused on your own future, not someone else's timeline. Long-term vision also improves your decision-making. You begin to ask yourself deeper questions before you act. You consider the long-term consequences of your habits, relationships, and career choices. You stop making decisions based solely on emotions or convenience. This creates a more thoughtful and intentional life. You become less impulsive and more strategic because you see your actions as building blocks of your future. Another important element is the way long-term vision fuels resilience. When setbacks happen, and they always do, your vision keeps you grounded. You do not crumble at the first obstacle because you know what you are working toward. Your vision gives meaning to your struggles. It turns pain into purpose and frustration into fuel. You are willing to endure temporary discomfort because you are connected to a future that is worth the effort. Long-term vision also strengthens self-discipline. When your future feels real and vivid in your mind, it becomes harder to betray it with careless choices. You think twice before wasting time, energy, or opportunities. You become protective of your goals. You begin to treat your time like an asset rather than something to be spent carelessly. This respect for your future self creates a quiet but powerful form of self-control. Over time, long-term vision reshapes your identity. You no longer see yourself as someone just trying to get through the day. You start to see yourself as someone building something meaningful. This shift changes how you speak, how you act, and what you tolerate. You become more selective with your environment, your influences, and your habits because you are no longer living randomly. You are living intentionally. As this vision deepens, it creates a sense of calm and confidence. You may not have all the answers, and you may not move as fast as you would like, but you know where you are going. You trust the process because you trust your direction. You feel grounded in your purpose, steady in your effort, and focused on the path ahead, guided by a future that you have chosen to commit your life toward. And as you leave today, remember this: rebuilding yourself is not a one-time event. It is a lifelong commitment. There will be days when you feel strong and days when you feel tired. There will be moments of doubt and moments of clarity. But every single day is a new chance to become wiser, stronger, and more disciplined than you were yesterday. You don't have to be perfect. You just have to be persistent. You don't have to move fast. You just have to move forward. Keep rebuilding your habits. Keep strengthening your mindset. Keep challenging your limits. One day you'll realize that all the hard work, the silent effort, and the painful growth shaped you into someone unstoppable. To everyone listening, I wish you the courage to start, the discipline to continue, and the patience to grow. May you rebuild yourself into the person you know you are capable of becoming.